I met up with the editors of the new Sony Pictures film Missing, out in theaters now, and they told me all about their unique workflow for editing this very specific type of thriller.
You need to let the police handle this.
I tried!
I'm not giving up on my mom.
Hey, what's up?
Super nice to meet you.
Yeah, good to meet you.
Hey,
this is Ben. Ben. And this was your first studio feature, right? Was this yours as well? Wow.
So this is about an 18-year-old girl who's looking for her missing mother, and her mom went missing while on vacation in another country. And it's told all through screens, so we're looking at the main character's laptop and seeing what she's doing on the laptop while she searches for her mom, and then also phones and different screens like that. The directors of this film, Nick and Will, they edited the first film. So when we came on board this, we already had a lot of support in terms of how this whole workflow works. We chose in the edit basically how to cover the laptop, so punching in on close-up shots, doing pans, all kinds of things like that. We essentially shot the film through the edit.
And then there were certain sequences that weren't necessarily like shot for shot outlined in the script, so that we would film ourselves in our living rooms and stuff, like acting it out just to like rough it out in a way that we could show it to them. And a lot of that ended up informing what was shot on set.
Oh yeah, there we are.
Ever since they met, obviously they were closer than I thought.
June, calm down. Maybe there was a good answer.
For why she was messaging him on
So, you know.
Best actor awards too, wow.
Yeah, just us in our rooms during the pandemic.
But in that way, it really did feel very film school, or very just like, you know, teenagers being like, we want to make a movie, let's do it.
Yeah.
And this is the beginning of it.
That's the cool thing about these movies. This is obviously like an upscale, bigger budget version of this thing, but you could take the same concept and film it super cheap with actual just iPhone footage and webcam footage.
Yeah. Other than the footage itself, everything else was made
by
using Adobe tools.
All of it was out of the box Adobe. Like, we didn't use any special plugins.
So we're looking at this timeline here. This looks crazy. There's a lot of layers. Tell me what's happening.
This was one of our final timelines for one scene in Premiere before we moved it over to After Effects. And it's just layer upon layer of PNGs to build up the computer screen and all of the assets. We'd start in a wide, like here we have June's desktop background, and then we'd start adding elements to it. So like there's
each
of these things that you can edit and move on its own. So you'd start to build these things up and then place them, and then that way they could each be animated and moved with keyframes. And then so what we would do is build this wide, and then we used adjustment layers inside Premiere to build the shots. So up at the top we have those adjustment layers.
So these are all just like empty adjustment layers.
Just like a transform effect?
Exactly,
we threw a transform
yeah.
effect,
So then we want to be closer, like then suddenly we're closer and move around.
And so just to be clear, when you make a screen recorded thriller, you're not actually recording the screen. You're creating the entire screen from scratch, so you have full control over the entire
Exactly.
edit.
Full control and infinite resolution. That's really the main reason for the Illustrator files.
Yeah.
So all the graphics they're working with in Premiere up to this point are just temp graphics. At the same time, they're having designers build out UI elements from the Mac and the iPhone in Illustrator files so that they're based on vector graphics, which means you can scale them up infinitely and keep them looking super sharp, which is a requirement for viewing a movie like this on the big screen. So once they finished all their work in Premiere, they brought the whole project into After Effects and replaced all these temp graphics with those infinite resolution Illustrator files. And are these right now the temp graphics?
These are temp graphics. Yeah. Some of them are from our final Illustrator files, but we went through and replaced everything essentially. And when you get close, it does lose a lot of resolution. And that's something that was so nice about moving it over for the finishing phase, is that we could finally get those high
It's
res.
really satisfying to just suddenly see it all crisp and perfect.
It's like a Claritin ad.
Apple UI actually like updated 3 times, like for Macs while we were making this. So we 3 times had to change the total look of the, and so that was like a big stress. We probably know Apple UI better than they do.
I think we do.
Yeah.
You look at a movie like this and sometimes you're like, oh, they just recorded it on their screen, but like we really chose it.
And I think some of these movies, you could definitely see that, especially for like short film versions of this that you'd see on YouTube or something, but this does take it to a cinematic level where the way you cut around and make it feel like a normal dialogue scene, even though it's just through like a FaceTime on a screen. You can punch into the person when you want there, over the shoulder or whatever, and then follow their mouse around as they're typing. The coolest part to me was you can see them typing something in, the way they type it in, or if they go back and change what they're typing. It's almost like a novel. You're getting their internal monologue in a way that you wouldn't normally be able to get in a movie.
In a normal scene, as far as like continuity goes, you cut to one person and you cut away from them and you don't see them at all when you're on the reverse shot. But when you're dealing with a picture-in-picture on a FaceTime window, the person down here is always being seen. And so sometimes it was actually tricky to maintain some semblance of continuity.
So when you had those distortions in the video of like lag in the video from FaceTime or whatever, that's when you're hiding little jump cuts or
a lot of times,
we're
either
slowing
like
down clips.
Slowing down clips, sometimes
slowing,
combining takes even.
They also shot on a bunch of different cameras, so there's a point in the film where there's a lot of security cameras being used, and that was shot on actual security cameras.
Okay. Speaking of shooting on multiple cameras, what if you're doing a multi-camera shoot and you don't have two of the same cameras? Well, most of us don't. For example, I'm shooting on an iPhone over here and my GH5S over here. But fortunately, I'm able to match the colors on these two very different cameras perfectly using Cinematch, the sponsor of this video. Cinematch is a plugin that works with some of your favorite editing programs like Premiere, Resolve, and Final Cut. And it's just an effect you drop on the clip. You tell it what camera you're using, what camera you're trying to match it to, and it does all the rest. They've analyzed the sensors for all the most popular cameras, and it will match any log footage to any other log footage perfectly, and you can even apply your Rec 709 transformation for your camera in the effect. And because it's made for your camera sensor, you get some raw-like camera controls built into the app too for manipulating the color, or you can apply your favorite creative LUT and it will work perfectly for your camera even if it wasn't designed for your camera. So check out Cinematch today. You can use the code STANDARD at checkout for 10% off, or just click the link in my description to get that discount applied automatically. Thank you, Cinematch. Now back to the interview. How does the mouse movement work with this kind of a timeline?
Here's our mouse, and so the mouse is just its own asset, and if we need to move it, keyframe 1, keyframe 2.
Those are very important keyframes, right? Because that's the closest thing you have to the character's internal world.
Exactly.
Is that mouse a lot of the time.
And we spent a lot of time, especially in really key moments, sometimes those keyframes get very intense in terms of the little pauses and whatnot. Yeah. But one of the things that was nice is then this was, again, just getting it to the point where we had our timing and the intention of it, and then when we moved to the finishing after the lock, we were able in After Effects to motion sketch the mouse so that it had more of a realistic, natural flow to it. It adds that final.
Yeah, in Premiere, everything, obviously like footage, timing, shots, all of that was completely locked, but it was in the After Effects phase that like the real detail stuff was really dialed in with.
Oh, now we're into After Effects land?
Yeah, so this is what our After Effects project looks like for one scene.
One scene.
So essentially what you saw earlier with the adjustment layers being each shot is now mimicked here. So each of these is a different shot of the film. And if you step inside, that's where it gets.
Oh yeah, these are all pre-comps.
Yeah.
Oh my
so
God,
in here
no.
is where you start to see some of the
No!
things. Again, we had never used this project before this film. So it's all doable. Like anyone can learn this. I really do think.
I found with After Effects, I wasn't comfortable with it until I absolutely needed to learn it for a project, and then when you're thrown into the fire, you learn it. But
exactly.
It comes down to like little details, like whenever you open a new tab, it has to animate out, and then there's a little loading wheel that goes through 2 phases. And actually, if you hover your mouse over tabs, it has like a little spotlight.
Yeah, the mouse
there's so many details that we had to
one.
dig in and
you can see
recreate.
This one layer is just the mouse, and anytime you see all these keyframes, that's where we're getting that motion sketch to give us that realistic movement of how the mouse moves across the page. Then if you step in, it's just, this is the mouse asset, but it looks like here it probably hovers over something with a hand, so it changes to a hand and then changes back. It's like passing over a button, so it'll change for 1 second. Not even a second, a frame or whatever.
You're working as co-editors on this. Have you all worked with a co-editor before on a big project?
We did not really know each other before becoming partners on this.
We started during the pandemic in our homes, and we'd pull each other up on Zoom and just keep ourselves muted all day.
How meta is that? Oh my God,
It was.
editing this thing through Zoom? Jesus.
And so we would just like unmute and be like, hey, I have a
Like,
question
hey,
about this.
like, can you look at this? What do you think about this?
What would you say were the biggest things that helped get you here to like this level? Because this is a big step up.
I feel like this specific project had a lot to do with us just all sort of knowing of each other from film school. It was less about the classes and what we learned there and more just about knowing people, because a lot of film jobs happen just from people you know and stuff. But I also think that everything we did between, you know, college and this project allowed us to be ready to be considered for a film like this.
This is definitely the biggest thing I've ever edited, but even when I wasn't on jobs for editing, I always do my own personal projects a lot, and I think just staying kind of active in this field and just having the confidence to know what you can and can't accomplish.
100%. It's more important that you're doing something than that you're doing the exact right thing right
Yeah.
now. Just like, don't sit around. You're going to lose more by indecision than...
And I think just saying yes to kind of almost anything that comes up along the way, like, will lead you somewhere. I started in commercials and like started as an assistant editor at a commercial house, and knew even then, like, I really want to do films, but like, okay, I'm going to start this commercial place and learn a ton here. It all does help push you in a direction, I think.
Definitely.
So just saying yes to as much as you can.
And this movie comes out
January 20th.
in theaters?
In
Theaters,
theaters!
like the good old days.
Only in theaters.
Are y'all going to go to see it in the theater and a discreet, you know, viewer with your hats on and
I'm
stuff?
getting like a bunch of my friends together. It's not going to be very discreet.
Now, this is the super cut down version of this interview, but if you want to see the full video that's 45 minutes long where we get into all the nitty gritty of their workflow, check it out on my Patreon. Thanks so much to Ariel and Austin for having me, and go check out Missing. It's in theaters now. I love the movie and I love this format. You can tell such a big scale story on such a tiny scale. You can tell a whole movie without even leaving your desk, folks. So go give it a shot. See y'all next week.
There's actually a lot I want to talk with you about. Oh my God, someone's here.
Honestly, the most unrealistic part of this whole movie is that nothing ever crashes on the computer.
I know. She's got great internet
Yeah.
connection.
Thank God she wasn't using Premiere in the
Yes.
film.
Yeah.